Lieutenant, I'd like for you to meet the lady of the house. Ma'am, ma'am!
You best pay heed to the sergeant's gratitude, because it's the last gift you'll ever get. The last one on this earth, this I promise you.
Let me have that gun, ma'am.
This your pleasure, ma'am?
And duty? A little of both, perhaps.
Then you'd best get on with it.
Ma'am, the lieutenant here tried to save my life.
You've thanked him, Sergeant. Now, if you'll be kind enough to step aside so I can thank him for a few other services. I couldn't have missed you. I couldn't have missed you.
It doesn't make any difference whether you did or whether you didn't.
Now I remember they got you that day, Lieutenant. But you remember you kneeling down tending me, and this shell exploded in the trees over our head, and this hot steel went spraying all over the place. I remember you standing up and clawing at your eyes and screaming, "I'm blind! I'm blind!" I remember thinking they killed you. I remember thinking that you were dead.
That doesn't make any difference now either. That water from the well.
Certainly, Lieutenant.
Either you're closing your eyes to a situation you do not wish to acknowledge, or you are not aware of the caliber of disaster indicated by the presence of a pool table in your community. Well, you got trouble, my friend. Right here, I say trouble right here in River City. Why, sure, I'm a billiard player. Certainly mighty proud to say I'm always mighty proud to say it. I consider that the hours I spend with a cue in my hand are golden. Help me cultivate horse sense and a cool head and a keen eye. Did you ever take and try to give an ironclad leave to yourself from a three-rail billiard shot? But just as I say it takes judgment, brains, and maturity to score in a bop-line game, I say that any boob can take and shove a ball in a pocket. And I call that sloth. The first big step on the road to the depths of degradation. I say first, medicinal wine from a teaspoon, then beer from a bottle. And the next thing you know, your son is playing for money in a pinchback suit. And listening to some big out-of-town Jasper, hearing him tell about horse race gambling. Not a wholesome trotting race, no, but a race where they set down right on the horse. Like to see some stuck-up jockey boy setting on Dan Patch, make your blood boil, well, I should say. Now, friends, let me tell you what I mean. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pockets in a table. Pockets that mark the difference between a gentleman and a bum with a capital B, and that rhymes with P, and that stands for fool.
You are now listening to That Twilighty Show About That Zone. I'm Alex Saltz, and today we talk about the episodes The Passersby and A Game of Pool with the great Jack Klugman. Stay tuned.
Begin tonight by asking, as I have been, my guests, what they've been drinking. And Alex brought over some really nice Malbec from Argentina, La Finca, I think, which roughly translates to "your mother's a whore" in Argentinian. So that's
real?
No.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. La Finca. I'm gonna have to assume it's something horrible. It sounds like bastardo, or something, or bastarda.
La Finca.
La Finca.
La Finca. It's from Argentina. It's pretty good. You like it? Pretty good, right?
It was good. It was really good.
Yeah.
It's very good. I'm still enjoying it right now.
Yeah,
So.
me too. I just finished my enjoyment. Yeah, I mean that's what you get when you spend $300 on a bottle of wine.
Yes, yes. Or steal it from someone.
Right.
I hate to put you on the spot tonight, but I put together the episode that precedes this episode with Brandon Cruz, and it turned out so well. It was incredible. Great guests, great edits, great music, and musical interludes that this episode will, by that standard, be complete and utter crap by comparison, unless you can bring it. Can you bring it?
I could bring it. Trust me.
Can you try to bring it? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy to be recording this episode with you because these are two killer episodes. These are personal favorites of mine. They're in my heavy rotation. I play them constantly because they're both very nearly perfect for me. I've said it before. The third season is probably my personal favorite of all the seasons because there's so many stone cold classics, and these episodes are right up there on the list for me. So we have The Passersby with James Gregory and Joanne Linville. We start with a long march down a road. Gregory plays a Confederate soldier. He's wounded. He's got a gimpy leg, and he's got a git-box. He calls it a git-box, not a guitar. And it just looks like a badass homemade guitar that Jack White would build in 10 minutes. Do you remember this documentary that he did?
No, I don't.
I think it's called It Might Get Loud. That's the name of the documentary.
Yeah.
Him and Jimmy Page and The Edge from U2 all basically converge and trade licks and guitars. And he, in the beginning of the movie, right before I think even the credits roll, he makes a guitar, Jack White, out of a slab of wood.
Right, I think
some
I've seen
guitar
this.
strings and a Coke bottle, and he puts an electric pickup on it and puts it right into an amp, and he starts playing it.
That's funny. And actually, I was just listening to an interview with Jack White on Tape Op magazine, which is actually a pretty good industry magazine for recording. They now have podcasts.
It's one of the professional standard magazines.
It's very good. Yeah, I really like the format. Yeah. And, they interviewed him. He's a really interesting guy, Jack White.
Well, yeah. I mean, you could build a guitar out of a Coke bottle on a slab of wood.
He has a hard time getting women.
I don't think he has a hard time getting them. I think he has a hard time keeping them, mainly. And he also tends to get into a lot of fistfights. But again, he's a musician.
Jack White?
Yeah, he's kind of a reckless Detroit boy, you know. So
yeah,
he stops at Scarlett O Hara's house. Well, Scarlett is played by Joanne. Actually, her name is Lavinia Godwin.
How did you get Scarlett O'Hara?
Because she's got this, oh, Lordy, I believe I'm getting the vapors, sir. I'm going to pass out. Never look directly at a woman from the South.
It's true. Was she well known beyond the Twilight Zone?
She was in a lot of television at the time. She was in a Star Trek episode. She played a Romulan commander, female Romulan commander. She's been on like a lot of things. Married to someone of some note. I forget his name. But great actress. I
liked her kind of southern, charming kind of...
She is, she's just like, I mean, she's watching all these soldiers walking down a road past her house.
She's watching them, yeah.
Her house is like in ruins because it's the end of the Civil War.
It's not funny. I don't know why. I just chuckled. I think because of this La Finca.
La Finca. So she was sick. The war's over, and you think all the soldiers are headed home.
When you say she was sick, what do you mean sick?
She said that she had a really bad fever or something, like a bad temperature. She doesn't really know what the ultimate outcome of it is at that point.
Right.
Home is not where the heart is. So James Gregory takes up with Lavinia, and they sing songs and remember the glory days of the South. That seems to be what it is, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, and he initially stops because what? He wants some water or something?
Yeah, he just wants to rest a little bit.
Yeah.
He's got a messed up leg, and he's all wounded and everything.
He serenades her. Yeah, right. So they have a conversation. They're talking, and he's playing guitar, and they're both actually observing this steady stream of soldiers that keep coming by in the street in front of the house.
One thing I really have to mention is that this episode is beautifully shot.
It really is. I know.
It's almost like a period horror film.
Now, do you think they shot it in a set indoors? Or do you think shot outside?
Definitely.
It was an indoor set.
There's no point to. I mean, like all the action is internalized. It's all centralized to this one location, which is the front of her house, right?
Yes.
You're not going to waste a lot of time and money trying to build an exterior set, especially with black and white. You just put all that on a sound stage, and it's wonderful. It's very similar to another episode called The Grave.
Oh, I have to see that one. Yeah.
With Lee Marvin And Lee Van Cleef and Strother Martin and James Best, great cast.
Yeah, who cares? All right, so anyway. So
beautifully
we learned,
shot.
No, it sounds good. So we learned that Lavinia, the woman, her husband was
Wait,
killed.
are you
in
about
war.
to... Oh, you spoiled it. You're about to spoil it. I was going to...
Was that a spoiler?
Spoil it.
All right, you spoil it.
Well, I was just going to say, it's almost like a period horror film, especially with all the gore and the dead people. They're almost like zombies.
What do you mean dead people?
Well, okay.
Isn't that a little later that we discover?
Moving on, Lavinia is waiting for her husband to come home. She's heard rumors he's probably dead, but she refuses to believe it. James gets the clue early on when he sees soldiers he knows have got to be dead. A soldier shows up on a horse asking for water. He's got a bloody hole in his head. You know, remember she gets the gun.
First
She's like,
telltale sign.
She notices that he's like one of the enemy. I guess he's a rebel.
Going on. Yep.
And
he's
great bit with the lantern.
He's a Yankee, right?
Yeah, he's a Yankee.
Yeah.
He's over there. He's like, yeah, I remember you. You got shot and everything. And she's like grabbing a gun. I'm just like, I'm going to repay the favor you did us. So she shoots too, and he doesn't even react, right? James Gregory gives him the water.
She shoots him and just like doesn't do anything.
He's just sitting there on his horse. Then James Gregory swings the lantern around to his face. It's a great shot. That's an awesome shot when he swings that lantern over and we see this messed up face and he's got a hole in his head and everything.
I know. It gave me chills.
That's awesome. So finally, Lavinia's husband shows up, and James Gregory figures it out. And I'm ready for my twist. The twist is, it's Sixth Sense with Bruce Willis. They're all dead.
Mm-hmm. You just gave it away. Spoiler alert.
All right, so what was in your notes? You can go ahead.
It was pretty interesting episode. You know, I think we could figure out the plot not too long into it. You kind of figured out that.
Did you find it interesting that the script is like morally ambiguous, wherein he's just telling the story of the side of the Civil War that we assumed were bad guys, which is the South, right?
Yep.
There's our primary enemy up here in the North. This is how we view those people, and we still view them that way.
And you're saying that the Twilight Zone obviously was a TV show that was more, you know, West Coast or East Coast, North.
Well, I mean, whatever Serling's aspect, yeah, he was probably conflating those kind of politics at the time where the North is considered the heroes and the victors of the war.
So, yeah.
This is a civil war between North and South. There are no winners. Not in this country. We have killed our own brothers. And we did it all as Americans. They all fought as Americans and died as Americans against each other.
I know. This
is something that we shouldn't do. It's kind of a terrible thing when you think about it. It's not about, oh, we have to vanquish the Yankees or, oh, we have to vanquish the Confederacy. That's so in Serling's script. Serling wrote this. He
didn't write all the Twilight Zones, right?
No, but he wrote a majority of them.
Yeah,
he wrote like most of them. He was a workhorse when it came to that. But what I would say is that he's not interested in enemies. He's interested in people.
Finding commonalities.
Yeah, and that's what these people are. There's only one problem I had with the episode. Because I love this episode so much, but the only problem for me is Abe Lincoln at the end.
What's your problem with him? He was great.
Because it's just a little too on the nose. There's at the bit at the end, Lavinia finally. Well, no, actually, she still doesn't really get the clue in her head. Her husband, her dead husband, does, and her dead husband talks to James Gregory, and he's like, "You know what's going on, don't you, Lieutenant?" And he's like, "I kind of figured it out.
Yeah,
we're all dead." And Lavinia's like, no.
Wait, her Abe Lincoln came. He
was
played by
okay.
Austin Green, by the way.
Austin Green.
I don't know who that is, but
wasn't he on Beverly Hills 90210? I could have sworn he was.
Maybe another incarnation of him, but
no, I think I've called him.
So
confused.
you're saying that, as I recall, Abraham Lincoln came at the very end when just.
Yeah, right at the end. Okay, this is how it's set up, right? Lavinia's husband is like, I'm going up the road, Lavinia. You want to join me if you want to. We're going now.
Right.
We're going on to the next life, wherever it is. And she kind of collapses on the floor, on the ground. And Abe Lincoln is the last guy on the road. He picks her up. He picks her up and he dusts her off and he says, it's a bit rich. It's a bit heavy-handed. He says, I am the last victim of the war. You know?
Yes, I remember.
And that's a little too on the nose. I mean, he's really hammering a point home. He didn't have to do that. He didn't really have to put Abraham Lincoln. And it can be debated that he really wasn't a victim. He was a victim. Abe Lincoln is the victim of a kind of a lunatic actor who shot him in the head in a theater. You know?
Right, but was that actor a Confederate? You know,
No,
or
he was just he
politics?
he shouted I forgot "Death to Tyrants" in Latin and shot
All right.
Abe Lincoln. Maybe
Just a little, you know,
he just
a little
saw it that way.
unstable.
Of all the wonders that I yet have heard, it seems to me most strange that men should fear, seeing that death, a necessary end, will come when it'll come. That's from Shakespeare. Julius Caesar. You see, my dear, I'm dead too. I guess you might say I'm the last casualty of the Civil War.
And it's
Right.
like
It was a very poetic ending. The way they
what
kind of
what did
walked
you
off
think
with
of the episode? I think it's killer, but what did you think?
Overall, I think it was a really good Twilight episode. I didn't want to stop watching it. I can't really.
There's so much ambiance about it, and it's got such a horror vibe to it. Southern Gothic horror is what it reminds me of.
There is. I like the way it was filmed, like you said. I like the simplicity of it. That really everything took place right in the front yard area.
This is the kind of thing I'd love to see as a movie, in some capacity, in some way, and even
Right.
shot in black and white. I prefer the black and white. The black and white really brings it to life in a way the color wouldn't.
Mhm.
I don't know why, but color wouldn't do it.
Yeah, and the other thing about the story that
It's like if Neil Gaiman wrote Gone with the Wind. That's what it would be like.
wow, yeah, yeah. It also kind of reminded me of a story that someone else told me once, which was when they were children, and this man seemed to be truthful in this account, but he had kind of an otherworldly experience in the South.
This sounds a little on the oddish.
It is, yeah, on a
Okay.
dirt road, and he and his cousins at the time, like a bunch of them, like eight of them, were playing on the front lawn of a house on like an old country road, and a inexplicable thing happened, where this is completely different from what happened here, but it does these stories, they come from tales, some of which people have claimed to have experienced. In this case, he was in this front yard playing with his young cousins, and a miniature car came up the street. But it was entirely real, but it was from a different era. This
What
was
do you mean, like miniature?
It was this
like
was
a-
in the 50s.
but it was like a full-size car?
Model T Ford from like what, the 20s.
You mean like a working car that somebody could drive?
It
It wasn't. You're not talking about a radio controlled car.
No, it was a
or
real
anything.
car, but
Okay.
it was scaled down the size of a toy. And the kids were just freaking out. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. And the car stopped in front of their house. A tiny man walked out of the car. There was a woman in the car. Yeah, what this was an interdimensional rift, which some people have claimed to have seen. I know.
Wait, you're telling me that a bunch of people saw this?
Yeah, but it's just kind of like, I know that's why you think this thing with the Twilight Zone, this story is so far-fetched, but people have actually...
When you say little people, are you talking like really small?
There were people, but everything was scaled down to be
Miniature
about like 1/20th of actual size.
Okay.
And they were watching this, and he and his cousins all corroborate the story today. So they saw this. The man came out and spun the engine in the front. The cars had these starters where you like turn something.
Yeah, like Evan Root.
Yes,
That's what they were called.
he watched him turn it on. He got back in. They drove off, and they started following the car down the road. They could never touch it. It would always stay a little bit away from them. Then it started
weird.
going so fast that eventually they started running. They just let it go.
Okay.
And it sounded like the most bizarre story. I thought this could be completely Twilight Zone. And for some reason, this story, The Passersby, kind of reminded me of that, because, you could think this is kind of ridiculous, and yet some people step into the Twilight
It would be
Zone.
ridiculous. It would be ridiculous if it was just one person seeing this. But if it was a couple of people, then I would put that along the lines of like folie à deux, which is like shared madness.
Yeah, I mean, either he was a great liar, this guy, or...
Swear
he
to
was part
God
of
that happened. I mean, like some people are really good at telling a story too. They'll make you believe.
But very imaginative.
I swear to God, I saw a guy floating in midair one time.
I know.
He totally did, and they make it sound real.
The thing is, I worked with this guy at that time. I was in an office, and I worked with the guy for like 5 years, and he had never, ever, ever done anything that kind of went into this area of like, you know, mysticism or paranormal. He was a straight edge guy. And then he told me the story one day because I brought up the subject of my interest in the parasciences.
Paranormal and the odd,
and he said, well, something happened to me when I was a kid. And he was very humble about it, unassuming.
Did you believe him?
I did.
Upon first?
I'm pretty sure it happened. You know why? Because as you know, I do stuff on another podcast, which you've been a guest on. The last episode,
which I'm going to plug right now.
Yes.
For those of you who don't know, Alex is co-host of the show On the Odd with Mark Giacomo, ontheodd.com.
And David, you were a guest.
And I've been a guest.
Most recent, second to most
on
recent
2 occasions, I think.
Yeah.
I was there. Well, I've recorded a few episodes, but I was there for the famous Scientology episode and also for a recent episode that just came out about reclusive celebrities, although not reclusive.
And I'll tell you, on the Scientology episode, some of the most interesting parts of that episode was when you were talking about your past.
Oh, yeah.
Your experiences growing up and living like in the city with your mom and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah.
So anyway, here we are, and we're back to that show. That Twilighty.
Great story. I like I said, I love this episode. So next up we have Game of Pool with Jack Klugman and Jonathan Winters, just one-on-one, and one principal location, a pool hall. But this works because these leads are so strong. This is episode 70 of Twilight Zone. Originally aired October 13th, 1961 on CBS.
So this was before or after The Passersby?
This is after.
Okay. Right. Same season, though, season 3.
Yeah, all of these are pretty much, I guess, in broadcast order.
Okay.
So Klugman, we have Jack Klugman plays another angry ne'er-do-well, a pool player, second best. You'll remember the last time we spoke about Jack Klugman.
Yep.
Was the episode A Passage for Trumpet.
Right, which was really good. Yeah.
And he plays that kind of character again, second best. He'll never be as good, although he'll never be as good as Fats Brown, played by Jonathan Winters in this episode. Although in A Passage for Trumpet, he kind of like took his talent and just crawled inside a bottle and you know, died at some point and was visited by the angel Gabriel, who has a thing for trumpet players, I guess.
That's right. So there's some kind of semblance to that other episode.
So he has this soliloquy at the beginning, talking to us, the audience, about how he busted his ass becoming a great pool player. He's by himself in the pool hall, and he tells us he would give
What's the name
anything
of the pool hall, though?
to play Fats Brown, and then we cut to heaven. The name of the pool hall?
Lister's Pool Room in Chicago.
Oh, okay.
Maybe you already said that.
I always thought that was Ohio. I always thought he was in Cleveland or something, but
yeah,
I guess
it's in Chicago.
You see what I mean? You see that? The right English, the right draw, perfect position, right? What do I get? Fats Brown, that's what I get. Fats Brown. Well, I'm sick of it. I'm sick of hearing his name. I'm the best pool cue on Randolph Street. Me. Jesse Carter, and you know that. All right. All right, Fats was good. I mean, he was good, right? But he's dead. You hear me? He's dead. He's been dead for over 15 years. But every time I turn around, I hear his name. Oh, you're pretty good, Jesse. But Fats is better. Fats is the best. Fats. Fats. I'll say it again. Fats Brown is dead and buried in the ground. And if he was alive and in this room, I could beat him. I'd give anything. Anything to play him one game.
Fats Brown. Fats Brown. Report to Lister's Pool Room, Randolph Street, Chicago.
so. We go to heaven. And we hear a secretary paging him. Apparently they have secretaries in heaven going, you know, Fats Brown, report to this pool hall in Chicago or whatever. There's a special place in heaven for sports, and Fats runs the pool section. So,
and Klugman was saying, I'm the best there is, I'm the best. And he was actually lamenting the fact that he can't
that Fats
play.
Brown is dead. He can't beat the
can't
best
actually beat
guy.
him because he thinks he could beat Fats Brown.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, that's when...
So we like to play little jokes on people who think they're better than everyone else by sending the best person down to either kick their ass or get their asses kicked.
Right. Yeah. All right. Let's see how you do.
So Jonathan Winters takes up his cue, materializes at the pool hall, and he says, at your service. So Jack Klugman, when we come back from commercial, Jack Klugman thinks he's losing it. And he thinks he's down on the farm, as it were. But Winters assures him he's real. just dead, like James and Joanne from the previous episode, and Abraham Lincoln. They're all hanging out up there, having a good time.
Twilight Zone, after all.
So apparently this seems like a supposition on writer George Clayton Johnson's part, but if you're the best at something, you have a special seat in heaven you hold until some punk comes along and claims they're better.
Challenges you, yeah.
And if they beat you, you have to relinquish your seat to that person. But is that really heaven? I mean, for me, that sounds like an exquisite form of torture. It's like no exit. I think it was Jean-Paul Sartre who said, how do you spell Sartre? Anyway, Sartre said, hell is other people. And this is pretty deep on a metaphysical level. We think it's heaven because it looks like Fats Brown is living on clouds or something. But the way Fats Brown talks about it, it's not that great. Because there is some jerk out there who thinks he's better than you. And you're kind of like punished. You're put into a box where you're the best. So it's all about proving yourself constantly.
Unless someone supplants you, in which case, well, that's later to come.
Yeah. They play a game of pool. The stakes are high. If Klugman can beat Winters, he gets to call himself the best pool player in the known universe. If he loses...
And he lives.
Yeah, and he lives. But if he loses, he dies.
It's a clever plot line. I wasn't sure what was going to happen at the ending. I kind of imagined that... I actually thought he was going to lose. And that some twist would happen. But as it turned out, as they keep going along, it becomes pretty evident that Fats lets Jesse win the game.
Well, kind of. I mean, I think if he actually deliberately made it look like he was trying to lose to this guy, then the forces of darkness or eternity or God or something will come down on him very heavily.
So you think he legitimately did beat him, or you think Fats was just sick and tired of this assignment he had up in heaven?
There is that, okay? Because, again, this is why I asked about heaven. And it seems to me heaven should be a cool place to hang out, not be the best pool player in the world or the best whatever in the world. But Jonathan Winters' character there, he does kind of say certain things to Klugman that make me think...
He wants to pass it on, the baton on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like... But no, he's looking out for Klugman, too. Klugman's kind of a kid in this, even though he looks like he's 40, but he's not. He says there's a lot of responsibility that's connected to being the best. You have to realize this. If you beat me, you are technically the best then. And then, come on, let's put two and two together. If you beat me, you're the best. And Klugman doesn't care. He's like, I'm better than you. I'm going to beat you.
Mm-hmm.
And
philosophically, right. It shatters this illusion we have of these iconic,
it's all about doing
talents.
the best. I mean, like
right.
if you imagine, let's put it in music terms. Somebody makes the best work that they'll ever make in their life, and they don't even know it, because the artist is always trying to do better than them.
They're almost doomed. Them after that.
They're consigned to that. I mean, like I don't know. What's in your opinion? What's the Beatles' best album ever?
The Beatles would be a tough band, but say.
Where do you think they hit their height creatively, their peak, where everything
that's
fired?
so hard with the Beatles because I mean, Sgt. Pepper's was extremely creative.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Maybe that was kind of a peak, but then Beatles fans would say that Abbey Road was their crescendo. I don't know.
I don't even agree. I say Revolver was their best work, but imagine that. Let's say Sgt. Pepper was their best work.
Yeah.
How do you top Sgt. Pepper? It's interesting too because they didn't. If anything, they turned around.
But they kept more.
They went backward. They took an opposite route from Sgt. Pepper. They did not explore that. They went back to basics. They did the White Album.
I mean, then there are people like Bowie who constantly reinvented. He reinvents himself.
There are the reinventors.
But you're right. How do you, a writer like? We were talking about, actually it was on another podcast. Which one was it? Oh, it was the one we just did for On the Odd about reclusive celebrities. Did we talk about Harper Lee? We did
talk about Harper Lee.
Someone just told me they read her new book.
The new book.
Right. Did you take a glance
I
at
have
it?
not looked at the follow-up yet.
Did you like To Kill a Mockingbird?
Thought it was a great book.
Yeah.
Wonderful memoir. And
but there is a case when she probably knew she could not top this.
That's why I said to you she's not really a writer, because she never really continued to write after that. No. She just sort of lived on that. And she kind of
David,
knew
we know that
whatever she did, she couldn't top it.
Right, but we know that she wrote that book. That book did not have a ghostwriter because they didn't exist at that time.
No, the follow-up, even as far as I know, is just sort of a collection of things that were all put together.
Is that the moon?
I don't know.
Staring over David's head. And
Probably an
looking at
airplane. We're near
No,
LaGuardia
it's
over here.
It's either a moon or a UFO. We're about to be abducted.
Right.
Seal up.
So when
seal
you're
up that rear end.
basically, Klugman agrees to those conditions, and they start playing, and Klugman is beating Winters for a while, but Winters slow plays him, lets him win a little bit, and then he starts kicking Klugman's ass, and the game gets interesting.
Yeah. Then you start to think, oh, maybe he is going to,
Yeah, at the end of the game, Klugman is one ball ahead, and he sinks one more, he wins, and Jonathan gives him a shot at losing, because it's obvious Klugman doesn't truly understand the responsibility of winning. So I'm just thinking, this is just fantastic, this interplay between these two characters. And Jonathan Winters is not known as a dramatic actor. He's more of a comedian.
I didn't really know much about his work.
He was a comedian. He was a stand-up comedian up until his death. And he was known for that. He was kind of like a deadpan kind of Bob Newhart type. He's most famous for being Mork and Mindy's son in the final season of Mork and Mindy. Because on Mork's planet, you age backwards.
Yes.
You start as an old person and then become a baby or something. It's like Benjamin Button's planet.
I remember him now, yeah.
And I always found him funny, and he always appeared on Johnny Carson's show. And he was always doing his stand-up routine.
By the way,
and
piece of
stuff
trivia,
like that.
what year did Johnny Carson die?
Johnny Carson died 2003?
I don't know.
No. I don't know.
Sorry, I just knocked your...
That's all right. 2003, 2004, 2005, whatever, something like that.
Did you watch Johnny Carson?
I did, quite a bit.
Yeah.
Once I got to know all the great comedians that that were on Johnny Carson. Jack Klugman also made many appearances.
Yeah.
Klugman just wants to win. That's all he cares about. He just wants to be the best. And they argue about it because Fats is getting nervous.
Almost
he
to
starts
an
sweating.
irritatingly level of bravado. He's just kind of
I'm the
come
best.
on. Yeah, exactly. And he's good at doing that. But it was so obvious that his insecurities were.
Did you see it
through
coming? I mean, before we actually talk about the ending for a moment, did you see something happening here that was not going to be to Klugman's advantage?
Yeah, eventually when you realize that he's going to win, then you realize that there's going to be some kind of philosophical twist.
Now why? Okay, there's a great bet here. Klugman sinks the ball, officially making him the best. When he does, do you notice that Winters smiles and he's relieved?
Oh, yeah.
He's relieved because he knows the secret before we all do.
Someone has to weed out those who haven't got what it takes. You see, the champions, the legends, they serve as a purpose, a challenge, an incentive.
I don't need a challenge.
Everyone needs a challenge, Jesse. Someone great out of the past to say, match what I've done, boy, and make it better. That's true in all walks of life. Music, politics, sports, you name it. Me? I'm only a pool player, but I'm the best.
You were the best.
Wait a minute, Jesse. Before you shoot, think of this. Shoot that ball, and you may win more than you bargained for.
There's nothing you can say that will stop me. Nothing.
I'm sorry. I was required to say that.
With great power comes great responsibility, and now Klugman, his character, Jesse Cardiff, has to consistently prove to every young punk out there that he's the best.
He's got this new role.
He'll live, and then he'll die. But when he dies, he'll be up in that box that Fats was at.
Yes.
And every time some idiot says, I'm better than Jesse Cardiff, then he has to be paged and go down there and prove himself.
Yeah.
Fats, for his part, can retire and go fishing. So what did you think of the episode?
The ending was cool. I didn't see it coming. I knew something was going to be there, but I didn't know that it was going to be in the form of some kind of karmic responsibility.
It's weird that I think you're the first person who's actually mentioned the karmic end of it, because there might be a little bit of karma attached. Obviously, Jesse has an ego.
Yeah.
He has an ego problem, too, because he thinks that just because someone is labeled the best, that they're going to somehow act like a king around you all the time. But also another bit of great dialogue there is when Fats is telling him, I may not look the part, but I live my life. you take this pool thing way too seriously. Yeah, I was the best at pool, but I also I swam in lakes and I made love and I did all these other things.
He actually told him that when they were playing the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was saying,
meanwhile, Jesse never had a girl. He was never good at anything. He never had a life. He never had a social life. Everything was about playing that game. And that's the problem. That's his big problem right there. He never lived.
He never lived, and then he was burdened with having to continue doing this for the rest of eternity.
And if you see that final shot of him, he's like slumped over the pool table in heaven, and he's just like, oh my God. So I love this episode. This is a great, 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 great episode. It's right up there in my top 5, I would put it. And I'm very happy to have shared it with you.
Me too. I enjoyed it.
All right.
Both of them were really good Twilight Zones. Almost up there with, I think, my very favorite Twilight Zone.
Which will be what?
I don't even know what season, or if you've touched on this.
Describe it. I'll give you a title.
The one with the man on the airplane who keeps seeing
William Shatner. Yeah, it's going to be tough figuring out who I'm going to talk to about that, because other people have said, when you're going to do the Shatner one...
It's almost the cliched Twilight Zone episode, but I really enjoyed it.
But that's another, it's kind of similar to this one, because I've said this before to other guests. My favorite Twilight Zone episodes are the ones that have their own logic, and you have to unravel it.
But how did that have its own logic?
Because it's like a crazy story. It's just a guy on an airplane who sees a gremlin out there on the wing. It makes no sense. None of this makes any sense. And then it winds up becoming reality. It's a great, I love when you have to surrender your own logic to follow another person's story. It's like you're telling me about the little people in the car?
Yep.
That's insane. That would never happen. But you're kind of a prisoner in that story if they're telling it to you.
Exactly.
Because you've become a part of their reality.
And how do you know it
didn't
happen to them?
Exactly.
How do you know they didn't step into
You can't
the
say,
Twilight
well,
Zone?
no, that's just ridiculous. Maybe you were looking at something from a different... There's an explanation for everything.
You have to
There's
admit that would make a great short film or a short story.
It would be insane. It's a great idea. It's a great piece for storytelling.
Yeah.
And but
much of this stuff
it
comes
isn't.
from...
It is a lot of times. If you are confident and believe what you're telling the other person, it sounds just all the more real for it.
I know.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you for
This was
having
very
me on.
good. Thank you for coming on. Remember, ontheodd.com, Alex Saltz, Mark Giacomo, and really great episodes.
And your other podcast, Blissville.
Oh, yeah. Well, they know all about me. It's my show.
Right.
I've annoyed you guys enough.
And do they know about another one that's in the works, or is that still under the radar?
What, Star Trek?
Yeah.
Hopefully that'll be out by this point. But yeah, I do.
That'll be interesting.
Star Trek, Ship to Ship, a Star Trek podcast with David Anderson and David Lawler. There's also Extreme Cinema, Blissville, and all that other stuff that you guys probably already know about. I don't know what else. Are you planning anything else? Well, there is Pro Audio.
We do Pro Audio Times.
Pro Audio Times.
You've written for.
I've written for. Other people have written.
You've been on.
Very good stuff there. And
a whole array of podcasts. We're the podcast team.
Yes, this is going to be fantastic when it's all finally put together.
All right. Well, thank you again for having me, David.
You're very welcome. Next time, I'll be discussing The Mirror and the Grave with Andrew Legank on that Twilighty show about that zone. Thank you, Alex. In the words of Pablo Neruda, I love you as certain dark things are to be loved, in secret, between the shadow and the soul. Good night.